Hello and welcome to another episode of Fulbrighters for Disability Inclusion. I'm your host, Samar Naqvi, and today we have with us Dr. Usman Zaheer. Dr. Usman Zaheer is a Fulbright alumnus with a PhD in epidemiology from Colorado State University. He is a veterinarian currently affiliated with Health Security Partners as a surveillance lead in the animal sector for the Fleming Fund program. He is working with government stakeholders to implement the One Health approach to developing policies to reduce drug resistance in animal and human health sector. Dr. Zaheer also has retinitis pigmentosa and low vision. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Zaheer. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well, Samar. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So for starters, I want to start speaking a little bit about the work that you do, because this is kind of unique, and I think our audiences would want to know what you're currently doing and how you got involved in this sector, working as a vet and then thereon designing these policies and more.
Thank you very much, Samar. Currently I'm working with Health Security Partners, which is a US-based organization. We work in Pakistan on antimicrobial resistance, and the project is funded by UK government's UK aid program. It's called Fleming Fund, and it is operating in 24 low and middle income countries across the world. And Pakistan is one of the countries where Fleming Fund is working, and it's mainly related to combating antimicrobial resistance. You and other audiences may be wondering what antibiotic resistance is. It's actually a phenomenon in which bugs such as bacteria, which cause disease in humans, animals, and in our crops and plants, they become resistant to antibiotics that are used for treating these bugs or these infections. So essentially, it's a phenomenon where drugs are no longer effective on people, animals, and in our crops and in plants. So it is a phenomenon which is becoming a big issue currently in low and middle income countries, especially because of weak health systems and also lack of legislations and competing priorities. So given that fact, UK government is supporting low and middle income countries, including Pakistan, so that we can work on combating this issue in countries. So in Pakistan, essentially, we are working with a One Health approach. It's an approach where we consider the health of humans, animals, and our environment, including our crops and plants, as one entity. That if humans are not healthy, it's not only their health, it's also impacting the health of animals, and likewise it will impact the health of environment. Like the same way, if our animals are not healthy, it will impact the health of humans as well as our environment and overall ecosystem and the biodiversity. So in a nutshell, we are trying to fix this issue from different angles, where we not only support our Ministry of National Health Services regulations and coordination, we also support our Ministry of Climate Change as well as Ministry of National Food Security and Research at the federal level. And if we go down to our provincial level, we work with our provincial health departments, provincial livestock departments, and also we work with the provincial environmental protection agencies as well as provincial drug regulatory authorities or drug controlling authorities. Because if we want to address this issue, it's not that it's one size fitting everyone. We have to have a holistic approach. We have to have an approach where we bring in different stakeholders, we work with different stakeholders, because what happens is the animals that we eat, for instance, if they have the bugs which are resistant to antibiotics, so what will happen is we will take those bugs through the food that we intake, or the food that we eat. So we can also get those bugs, and these bugs can then cause disease in people. And for instance, I get a bug that from a protein that I eat, which is resistant to a bug, to an antibiotic. So what will happen if the bug causes a disease in me, in myself? I take an antibiotic, it will not be effective. So it means that what will happen is my illness will linger on. It will affect my well-being, as well as it will affect my economics, my working ability as well. So it's not only a health issue, it's a very complex, a very wicked issue where we need to address it from different angles. Likewise, it's not only about animals, it's about humans as well. We see that in our every home that we are in, we see bunch of antibiotics in our refrigerators that we take. If a person has a flu, we just simply go and get a antibiotic. So when we take those antibiotics, the bugs inside us become resistant, and then they go down the drain into the sewage, and that sewage does not stay separately or in a hollow shell. It then goes somehow to our agriculture, into our crops, and also to our animals. So it's overall a cycle
Mm,
where health of different components of the ecosystem is linked to each other. So that's what we are trying to do through this grant from the from the UK government, that we are trying to address this issue in the country from a policy perspective, from a capacity strengthening perspective, and also from development of infrastructure, and developing the capacity of our laboratories at the federal level as well as at the provincial level.
that sounds fantastic, Dr. And it seems like very important work because, like you said, everything's connected to everything. So all species are connected in an ecosystem. So very important work. And if I may ask, how did you get involved in this? What piqued your interest, and since when have you been interested in this field? And just what piqued your interest?
Yeah. Summer, if I want to answer to that, might have to take you back a little over a decade. When we were DVM students back in 2009, it was our final year, and until that time, my main priority, as is for other veterinarians, is to treat an animal. But when we were studying a course on epidemiology back in 2009, the epidemiology is mainly related to the diseases at a population level rather than an individual animal or a human. It talks about at a population level. So that was the time I realized animals are living in a herd. They don't live in silos, they don't live alone. So if you want to control a disease in animals, it has to be a holistic a population approach. And then at the same time, I decided that, considering that the importance of a holistic approach and a population approach, I started my master's in epidemiology in Lahore. And then while I was working in my on my master's, and I was finalizing what should be my thesis title and how should I take my research forward, that was the time in 2011 there was an epidemic of dengue fever in Lahore. Some people may recall that it was a very big epidemic back in 2011. There was a lot of deaths back then. So at that time, I was a veterinarian, but considering the need of the time, I opted for a thesis in that focused on dengue fever. And for that, I had to interact with human health counterparts at New Hospital and also other human health counterparts. And at that time, I realized that we need to have a holistic approach also to include people, because there are diseases that come to humans from animals. It's not because that animals are bad, and I would never say that animals are bad. It's about the fact that we are growing. Human population is growing. When our population is growing, what are we doing? We are cutting the forests. We are going for more urbanization. We are changing the land cover and land use patterns. So when that happens, the bugs that are present in the forest or in wild, they get interacted. They then interact with people. So what happened is we get disease from them. So it's was about that time I realized I should be having opting a career which is more focused on global public health or on a public health issue, rather than just the clinical veterinary medicine where we treat one animal. So taking that forward, I started working for a project in Islamabad after my master's, which was funded by US Department of Health and Social Services, Health and Human Service, HHS, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And the project was related to field epidemiology and training program in the animal health sector. And at that time, we focused on three zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic diseases are the ones which can be transmitted from animals to people. So it was the funding coming from the US government. We worked on a couple of diseases at that time. And then I realized now is the time. I have gotten some experience in Pakistan and I have a educational background as well. It's the time I opt for a scholarship and I go out and get an advanced degree from US in epidemiology and overall veterinary preventive medicine arena.
Right, right, makes sense. So now that we know about your interest and how it came around, could we also speak a little bit about retinitis pigmentosa and low vision, what it means to have it, what it means in general, just for our audiences to be educated in it, your experience with it as well.
I wasn't sure it was retinitis pigmentosa. I believe until I think 2013 or 14, or 2014. I have had low vision issues and night blindness issue since I was very young. My mom used to tell me that when I was a kid in school, one day they got a note from my teacher that Usman has some vision issues, that he steps closer to the whiteboard whenever we are giving a lecture or something. I think I was 4 or 5 years old at that time. So then my parents got me checked from a doctor, and doctor gave me a prescription for the correction lens. And it all started at that time. It was hoped that there will be a cure after the age of 18, and that definitely 18 came and nothing happened. Then the science advanced, and then I think it was, as I indicated, in 2014, I learned that this is retinitis pigmentosa, and this is something that is related to the genetics. And then if we talk about if we now go back between age 5 and 14, and 2014, which is about, I think, 18 or I think 27-ish years. So I was studying in school. It was, I wouldn't say it was a horrible experience, but it was a tough experience. We have to do several of our things at night. We have to do several of our things when it's not, even in the daytime. If it's a dark room or darker corridor or something, it's tough for people like me who has retinitis pigmentosa to see. But I think through support from my family, I was able to manage that. And I believe I have always have good friends around me. Although there were always bad people who would bully or make jokes about it, which is a very harsh reality or a truth, I think, in several places. But I have always had some good friends around me who would support me in my school, in my university time, in my college time. So I think I was able to navigate around that. But definitely, it is not as easy as it may sound on this, because there are challenges that people like me who has a disability with vision have to face. And I would share one thing. When I applied for admission in medical college back in 2005, it's an old story, but I applied on a disabled seat as well. But after I think assessments and everything, they realized that no, this is not considered as a disability, which is fine. It sounds to me, and in the retrospect, that was a blessing in disguise. Maybe I would not have had such an good career and accomplishments that I have so far as a veterinarian if I was a medical doctor. That doesn't mean that medical doctors are not doing a good job. They are doing such a great job serving humanity. But I think that was a blessing in disguise for me, that I got rejected considering that they said that it is not a disability, which was a shocking thing for me. They considered people with, I still recall a person with, I think 1 or 2 digits amputated, considered disabled, which is a disability, I believe. But it was shocking to hear that vision is not considered a disability. But I think I have been able to manage it well so far through support system, and also I would say I have developed sort of a turtle skin. I don't mind if someone say anything. I do what I need to do. I don't care what they say. Uh, it maybe they are ignorant, or maybe that they do not know that disability is also a part of a diversity that we have. And if someone has one disability, but they are often having another ability that is making them coming somehow at par with others.
Sure. No, it makes a lot of sense, and thank you for sharing that story as well. Because I imagine, I mean, it's a difficult spot to be in as well. Because if you identify as a person with a disability, and then somebody mentions that you're not, then it's almost like that feeling of where do you belong? Which side? Is there a side? And I can understand if there were feelings and emotions that were obviously triggered based on something of this nature, because it's almost like an identity question. Where is it that you belong? And coming to that, talking about that, Dr. Zaid, I'd like you to elucidate a little bit what you think of yourself in terms of your identity, and then reflect a little bit upon the term persons with disabilities and what it means to have a disability and live a life with a disability.
Well, I think we have a long road ahead before even I start answering the question about the term disability. We need some time to digest this terminology as a nation or as a country, because when we see the word dis, we consider it something bad, such as disappointment, disqualified, or other words of this nature. Where there is a word dis, we think, oh, it's bad, it's negative connotation. But there is nothing bad about being disabled person. It's just how we are born. It's not in my control. So if I'm born like that, I have to live with that. The only thing we need to do is we have to be respectful. I personally have no shame in identifying myself as a person with disability. I'm speaking to you. I know this will go out loud. It does. I don't think it is going to affect me in any shape or form. Although this has changed over time. It was not, I was not like that when I was doing my DVM back in 15 or 13, 14 years ago. At that time, maybe I wasn't sure what are the rights for a disabled student or a person are, because we have seen people with no legs, but there were no options for them. I recall our classrooms were not accessible to people with disabilities, especially if person is not having a leg. How is he going to climb 20 steps and go to the classroom up there? And I'm saying is, and the same is for the people with vision disability. I know there were classrooms which were dark, laboratories which were very dark, and there are sometimes laboratories where we have to do some work on microscopes where things are already very tiny, and there were not much appreciation of the fact that we have to have give accommodations to people with disabilities. It's probably because they have not encountered it, or people are not much aware. So I think it's about raising awareness among people. And as I said, even I didn't have the awareness. I gave my GRE exams and my TOEFL exams when I was going to the US without any request for accommodation, because I didn't know that there is accommodation available. It's nothing bad about at the part of GRE or ETS. They publish it, they put everything. It was probably my sloppiness that I didn't read it, or maybe I didn't hear it in my peer group that there are accommodations that I can avail. Like currently, when I went to the US, I got a lot of awareness. I didn't. It's an old story now, but I scored very bad on GRE, which is fine now because it's over. But if I had a fairly equal opportunity to perform and the GRE exam, given my vision disability, I could have done better. But it's fine. But what I can do at this time is I can raise awareness among other students. When I was in the US, I was part of there was an a club called Resources for Disabled Students, where we would have our, I think, monthly meetings or something. I would go there. I would see people with different disabilities, and I would appreciate that how diverse we are. There
Yeah.
are people with different kind of disabilities who are doing such an incredible job, and I don't think there is any shame. I think the person who is mocking or who is bullying a person with disability should be the ones who is ashamed. Very recently, I was in Lahore like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was in a meeting. I whispered someone saying, "Why is this guy getting so closer to the phone? Why is he typing like that? Is he doing something very urgent? He should not do it like that. If I'm getting closer to my phone, there shouldn't be anything bad. I usually work like that when I'm working on my phone. So I don't think there is anything bad about it. I have my eyes, I have to use my phone, and I'm using it the way I can use it.
Yeah.
So you may think that I'm being a little emotional, but I think we have to give room to people with disabilities. We have to come out of only talks. It's time for more action. So I think when I was in the US, I got a lot of exposure, a lot of support from university. Teachers were accommodating. They would accommodate me in different ways, not giving any extra favor, but giving an equal opportunity. So if you definitely, if there are further questions on my experience there, I would be happy to respond. But over now.
No, absolutely. And not at all. I do not think you're getting emotional. I think this is very important. It's important information that you're sharing with the right emotion as well, because sometimes it's not as vehemently or as emotionally and as passionately talked about as it needs to be, because it is actually a really important thing that everybody needs to be aware of. Differences and diversity is what makes society beautiful, and inclusion isn't difficult in any which way. People are different, and that is something to be celebrated as opposed to something that is looked down upon. So I'm 100% with you in this, but you sort of alluded to we need to take action now. um, and I wonder if you feel, as a society, are we ready in terms of our awareness to know, for people around, do they know enough for some form of action to actually materialize, to be implemented, to be executed? Where do you think awareness stands in our society, and what sort of actions would you propose?
Well, it's again, as I said, it's a very long road ahead. If we just recall how US did, or they developed, or they passed the Americans with Disability Act, how people were bullied back in the US when there was no ADA, or how people were not given appropriate accommodations when there were no law or something. So I think, considering that, I think we have a long road ahead. But in terms of our society, I think there are ways we can do it. For instance, we have different housing societies. They
Mm,
always build sidewalks. It doesn't take much of money to just make that sidewalk accessible at the intersections. It's only takes uh, some kind of probably lobbying, or some kind of diplomacy, or some kind of talk with them, that it doesn't take much of an effort. There are several societies or housing areas where there are sidewalks. Just making those ramps, a little, very tiny ramps, which is fine. And the same way in our classrooms, why can't we have our classrooms with accessibility for people with, say, this musculoskeletal issues, where they don't have a leg or something. We
sure.
can do that. Same way for uh, vision. We, in our classrooms, why can't our classrooms be well lit? What happened actually is, Samar, if I don't have a disability with my legs, I can't put myself in those shoes, and I sometimes think, oh, I have ton of other things to do, why I focus on this?
Sure.
I'm a person with vision disability. Whenever I look at something, I look at it from a perspective of a person with vision disability. Is there enough contrast in the writing, for instance? Is there enough light in the corridor or hallway? But other people just think, oh, it's fine. And we sometimes bring in the budget and finance and whatnot. But if we want to address this issue, we have to come out of this traditional approach of just thinking in a straight line. We have to maneuver, we have to navigate around. Inclusion for people with disability will not come free of cost. It will definitely have a cost. But what we need to know is, what we need to consider is that cost will bring in people with extraordinary ability in some other areas. So it will pay off. It's not that they will not be a burden, but rather they will complement the work that we do. So I think there is a need to think that way rather than just thinking, oh, it's an extra cost. If I ask someone, oh, I need an extra light here, they think, oh, it's a extra 5,000 or 10,000. No, it's not only 10,000. You are encouraging not only Usman, you are encouraging other people with similar disability. They will have an opportunity. And same way for our transport system. I was just hearing a news yesterday that the new metro is in place in Islamabad. So I think if there are buses or such a transit system where people with disability are going, and believe me, there are more people with disability in poverty than who are privileged. So I think we need to work for them as well, that the mass transit system, that should be accessible as well for people with disabilities. How are we going to address those needs? If we are in a university, how are we catering to the needs of people with vision disability at night? If I have a class at night, how am I going to go to the class? Is there a free service available in the university that can take me to my hostel or my living place afterwards, or at least take me to the parking space where I have a ride or something?
Yeah.
So I think these are steps that, I'm not saying that we can fix everything, but these are some of the areas we can start with. We have to take a progressive approach. We have to take baby steps, but definitely one day we will see the change. And at the end of it, I will add one more thing. If we have a one lawn with similar kind of flowers, we don't see beauty in such a lawn or garden. We have to have different kinds and shapes of flowers so that we can appreciate the beauty. So we have to consider it that way and have a open mind when we talk about this.
100%, 100% agreed. In fact, you said something earlier in terms of the cost, and I'm not sure if you've read about this publication by the British Council that came around that said that in 2014 it was talking about like the economic case for including people with disabilities. That Pakistan suffers a GDP loss of US $12 billion by excluding persons with disabilities as opposed to including. So if it is about finances, it actually makes that sense too. And like you said, the garden and beauty, that metaphor, it's absolutely wonderful. And it's basic too, right? It is basic. It is about that thought, just that thought to include everybody and not think only majority. Also think the individuals who comprise the beauty, the individuals who are marginalized, the individuals who are disenfranchised. No, that's wonderful. So, I mean, like, before we come to a close, I'd also want you to speak a little bit about your Fulbright experience, what that was like when you went. How different was that world?
Well, Summer, as I tried to allude earlier a little bit, that my Fulbright experience was a good experience in terms of academics as well as cultural exchange, making connections, doing professional accomplishments, but it also gave me an opportunity to not only explore the resources that are available out there. For instance, as I indicated, through resources for disabled student office in the university, uh, if I needed a textbook, they will give me textbooks with I think with audios as well, and also they will give me softwares which will allow me to zoom in the text on my laptop when I was working. Also giving me entitlement for extra time for taking exams as well, where I would use that because there are some timed exams. There are some exams which are home based. The take home, which is fine, I can do it. I can take some extra time out of other time I have. But when it's a timed exam, uh, I was entitled an extra time, and I'm glad to share that that time, although it was issued, a letter was issued from the US, I have used it later on as well for other examinations. I got board certified in the US as well, um, and I had the entitlement for that exam as well. That they allowed me extra time for examination, and then with extra lighting and a brighter area with a bigger screen as well, because if I'm reading on a screen, I can't read from 6 feet or 3 feet or 2 feet or 1 feet. I only get 1 inch closer to a screen. When I get 1 inch closer to a screen, my view is only this. So I have to move with the screen to read there. So that takes an extra time. Likewise, when I'm talking, I'm not often able to see the keyboard, which means that there are typos when I'm writing. So when there are typos, which means extra time for editing and correction. So
Sure.
given that they gave me an extra time, and that time I have even used in Pakistan, using showing those letters when I was here in Pakistan for some of the things that I was doing here. So I think in the overall the US experience was good. And one thing that I liked about them was the fact, although they have gotten it has been a long road, they are doing more action. They are providing actions. What And they do not exclude people saying, oh, he is disabled, he cannot do it, let's give it to another person. No, 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 no. They will give it to me, but they will give me equal opportunity. They will give me equal resources, or equitable. Shouldn't say equal, but I would say equitable resources. What happened here is, we see a person with disability, or we say, oh, it's okay, or you can, the other person can do it. When we
Yeah,
do that, when we have that approach, you are taking that opportunity away from a disabled person who
absolutely.
already was not that privileged in life. So what happens is, the other person gets that done, you are again at a lower level. So I think, regardless, we shouldn't take disability as an excuse. Rather, we should provide people more opportunities so that they can come at par with other people who do not have an disability. And I think there is need for more action. We work in different organizations who are often sometimes uh, uh, development sector or other organization, but what we see is, there is oftentimes not enough support that is provided. I'm lucky that I work in an organization where I have gotten sufficient accommodations for the work I do, with lighting, with a desk space, with a computer, with screens and whatnot. But I believe organizations on the overall need to take more action and show statistics. Show statistics. By that I mean, how many disabled people they have. It's only not that, oh, we have provided this resource. How many disabled people in on average you have in your teams? If we
Mm,
don't have people with disabilities in our team, I think we are only talking.
mm.
Because if we, otherwise we can find people with disabilities and they can be part of our teams. So we need to include them with action rather than the talks. Over.
Sounds wonderful. Do you want to also add a parting note, a final comment, or any concluding remarks?
I would say, try to be more respectful of people around you. There are people who have disabilities, and they are very good human beings. They can do wonders only if you don't bully them, if you give them equal opportunities. Bullying is very toxic. Harassment is very toxic. If you harass people, you bully people for their disability, they will not be able to perform well or to the optimal caliber or the optimal for the optimal potential they have. So we have to be mindful of our words. Words have meanings and they have lasting impact on people. And we should try that our words do not hurt other in a way that they just stop. So, and also these people with disabilities, the first part of my conclusion was part for people who do not have a disability. The other part is for people with disabilities. Try to have a turtle shell, turtle skin. Ignore whatever everyone is saying. You do what you need to do. And this was the quote that one of my friend gave me a couple of years ago. She said, Usman, you need to have a turtle skin if you want to progress in life. Otherwise, people will not let you live. So I think with that, I would say have a turtle skin and be respectful of people with around you and people with disabilities. Over.
That's a wonderful message, Dr. Zaid. Thank you for being with us today and so candidly, openly, honestly sharing your thoughts as well. It was a pleasure having you. And once again, thank you. Take care.
So much, Samar. Thank you.